Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu ala al-Husayn, wa ala Ali ibn al-Husayn, wa ala awlad al-Husayn, wa ala ashab al-Husayn. We were doing commentary of Ziyarat Ashura, doing commentary of the du'as and the supplications inside this ziyarat. There are about 10 supplications, depending on how you calculate them. But today we are going to mention this line, and that is Allahumma aj'alni indaka wajihan bil Husayn alayhi salam fi dunya wal akhirah. Meaning that, O Allah, make me illustrious in your sight, in the name of Al-Husayn, peace be upon him, in this world and in the hereafter. Meaning, give me dignity, give me honor because of Husayn ibn Ali. It's a beautiful dua. But what does wajih mean technically? Wajih comes from wajh, which means face. And how we say in English, for example, to someone that wants to save face, wants to save their honor, protect their honor. Wajh also can mean the same thing. Or wajih means to have honor, to have dignity. And we see that this term has been used in the Holy Quran for Prophet Musa alayhi salam and Prophet Isa alayhi salam, that they are wajih in Allah. We read in 33:69 about Prophet Musa alayhi salam, وَكَانَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ وَجِيهًا. The Prophet Musa alayhi salam was distinguished. Or we read about Prophet Isa alayhi salam that his name, Isa ibn Maryam, وَجِيهًا فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ وَمِنَ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ. That Jesus, the son of Mary, is distinguished in the world, in this world and the hereafter, and among those that are brought near to Allah. So we're actually doing a very powerful dua, and that is to make us like the prophets, make us wajih, make us have honor, make Allah look at us in a special way, not like a normal person. Of course, not like a person that does not follow his instructions, like a wretched person. Make us wajih in Allah. Make Allah look at us in a way that is different than others. So how can we reach this? How can we be wajih? I'm going to answer this by using the Quran. We have verses that talk about those that Allah has blessed and given karamah to, given nobility to, those that He has elevated their rank. One of them is those that have knowledge. We read in the Holy Quran, يَرْفَعْ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ darajat. And Allah has raised those who have believed among you and those who were given knowledge by degrees. So He has raised the believers and those that have knowledge. He has given them rank. He has made them honored. So we should increase our knowledge. The knowledge that is from the Ahlul Bayt is the knowledge of the prophets. The Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam are the inheritors of the prophets. وَرَاثُ الْأَنْبِيَاء, we read in Ziyarat al-Jami' al-Kabira. Not only do they inherit the articles or the personal items of the prophets, say the ring of Prophet Sulaiman, or the staff of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, or the shirt of Prophet Yusuf, but they also inherit the knowledge that is present. They inherit the knowledge of the prophets, from Prophet Adam to Prophet Nuh, Prophet Ibrahim, our prophet. And this is all from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, as it reached them. So they are the knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt, they are the knowledge of the prophets. So therefore we should not waste our time with seeking knowledge that is useless. The best type of knowledge is that comes from God. The other way to increase or elevate ourselves in the sight of God is for us to have taqwa, to not sin. إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. The most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. So if we are righteous, if we are God-wary, if we are careful about the instructions and commands that Allah has for us, then we will be wajih, we'll have karamah, we'll be honored, we'll be noble. Also, we look at some of the traditions. That is, man ahana nafsahu akramahu Allah. Whoever fights against his desires, Allah will honor him. So these three things, seeking knowledge, especially knowledge of the prophets and the imams, not sinning, being careful to follow the instructions of God. And 3, fighting against our lower desires. This will give us value in the eyes of God. Now you might think that this is something difficult, because when it comes to, let's say, if we were to seek knowledge, the more knowledge we seek, the more we find out that we don't know. The more we have more jahl, actually, that we understand that we have more jahl and ignorance. You uncover this. And the more that we look at ourselves and examine ourselves, we see that we have more deficiencies in our actions. So what are we to do? We want to be waji, we want to have honor, we want that we go and when we die in the face of Allah and the hereafter, to be someone that Allah deems as special. So what are we going to do? And this is actually the final answer. So those are 3 answers in the Quran: knowledge, not sinning, having taqwa, and at the end fighting against our lower desires. But there's another way, and this way is from a story and from the writings of Allama Shushtari, Allama Ja'far Shushtari, that was a famous person that would speak on the pulpit, and that he would examine himself, and he became very upset when he examined himself, and he would talk to himself that he is at the age of 60. In the book of Wasa'il al-Muhibbin, that he is at the age of 60, he's saying that death is approaching him, and how death is approaching all of us, and we can apply this story to our own lives. That Sheikh Ja'far Shushtari read in the Holy Quran, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُم. The believers are those that only those, innama is hasr, it signifies exclusivity, are only those that when mentioned, their hearts become fearful. So he was saying, does my heart become fearful or not when Allah is mentioned? If not, I'm not a believer. So he's telling his nafs this, you're not a believer. Whenever Allah is mentioned, your heart does not tremble. So what am I going to do if I'm not a true believer? He says, well, maybe through akhlaq, maybe through good actions, through good ethics, by being compassionate to people, say, for example, or generosity or justice, for example. But he analyzed these things and saw, he says, I do not have these. What about all the fasting that I did, and the salat, and the prayers that I performed, and the hajj? But then he thought to himself, and he told his nafs this, he said that when you actually inspect these actions, even with all the conditions that they have, and let's say if I perform them correctly, how do I know it has been done sincerely for Allah? How do I know there hasn't been riyah in it? I wasn't trying to show off. There wasn't ujb in it. There wasn't pride in it. And even if it was accepted at the end, how do I know I didn't ruin it with sin? How do I know that through ghaybat or backbiting, I didn't ruin my salat, I didn't ruin my fasting, I didn't ruin my hajj? So I cannot rely on this. So he told himself, what are you going to do, nafs? What are you going to do to myself, to the soul? So he was in despair. And then he went and thought more, and writes that then I thought about the tradition of the Holy Prophet of Islam, that فَقَالَ مَثَلُ أَهْلَ بَيْتِي فِيكُمْ كَمَثَلِ سَفِينَةِ النُّوحِ, that the example of my family is the example of the Ark of Noah. مَنْ رَكَبَهَا نَجَى, whoever boards this ship will be saved. Whoever boards this ark will be saved. So then he kept telling himself, now look, Hussein is Safinatun Najah. Hussein is Safinatun Najah. He is the ship of salvation. He says, I might not qualify to be a believer, but I qualify for this hadith that قال الحسين أنا قتيل الأبرى. I am the one killed that people cry for. I'm the one that tears killed him. لا يذكروني مؤمن إلا بكى. A mu'min is he who, whenever Imam Hussein alayhi salam is mentioned, he cries. So he says, I qualify for this. Maybe I don't tremble, my heart doesn't tremble when I remember Allah always. But when I hear Imam Hussein, I know I cry. So at least I qualify for this. Then he thought to himself, what about this tradition, Shi'atana? And it says later on, يَفْرَحُونَ بِفَرَحِنَا وَيَحْزَنُونَ بِحُزْنِنَا. That our Shias, they are those that get happy with our happiness and become sad with our sadness. But I become sad with the sadness of Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salam. Therefore I qualify for this. I might not have all those qualities that a true Shia has, and all the strict qualities, but I qualify for this because of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So he told his nafs to be rest assured. And then he says this, he says, I have not been very close to God, for example. I haven't been very close to God in those high stations of being Muharram, but I know this, that I visited Imam Hussein. And whoever visits Imam Hussein, kaman zar Allah fi arsheh, as if he has visited God in his throne. Is there anywhere closer to Allah than his arsh, to his throne? So he says, I have reached the maximum and full closeness to God, because whoever visits Imam Hussein has visited God in his arsh. So then he tells himself, I don't have those actions that cause me to go to heaven, as we said, fasting and hajj and Sawm and salat. I don't know if these are accepted, but I know this tradition, man baka wa abka falahul jannah. So whoever cries or makes one person cry, he is promised paradise. So I know that I cried for Imam Hussein, and this will cause me to enter heaven. And finally he told himself this, that if I don't qualify to be a true visitor of Imam Hussein, I know that the visitor of Imam Hussein will be given shafa'at and the power of intercession to 10 or 100 people. I know that the visitors of Imam Hussein will intercede in my behalf. So Shaykh Ja'far Shushtari became happy and knew that he would not be given honor and dignified to himself. He said, not through his actions, not through that strict criteria, but through Safinatul Najat, through Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and that we all will be given glory, we all will be given wajh and become wajih, illustrious in the sight of Allah because Hussein ibn Ali. Now I'd like to mention one of the musibats of the tragedy of, one of the tragedies of Karbala. And that is the tragedy of the 3-year-old daughter of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. As you know, it doesn't matter how old the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, their family members are. These are holy figures. Imam Hussein alayhi salam was 5 or 6 years old when he was in Mubahala. And they saw his face and they were afraid that he would pray against the Christians of Najran. So it doesn't matter at what age you are, if you are chosen from Allah, if you are pure, and if you are from this family, you will be blessed. And we see that this 3-year-old daughter of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, after Imam Hussein is martyred, we read in Ziyarat Nahiya, one of the ziyarats that's attributed to Imam Mahdi, وَرَفَعَ عَلَى الْقَنَاةِ رَأْسُكِ. Imam Hussein, after your head was on the spear, وَصُبِيَ أَهْلُكَ كَالْعَبِيدِ. Your progeny, your family were captured like slaves. Your 3-year-old daughter was captured like a slave. وَصُفِّدُوا فِي الْحَدِيدِ فَوْقَ الْأَقْطَابِ الْمَطِيَّاتِ. And bound with iron chains atop camels, they took their family. تَلْفَهُ وُجُوهَهُمْ حَرُّ الْحَاجِرَاتِ. That midday, the scorching heat would go on their faces. يُسَاقُونَ فِي الْبَرَارِ وَالْفَلَوَاتِ. They were driven across deserts and wastelands. أَيْدِيَهِمْ مَغْلُولَةً إِلَى الْأَغْنَاقِ. And their hands chained to their necks. يُطَافُ بِهِمْ فِي الْأَسْوَاقِ. The family of Imam Hussein, the daughter of Imam Hussein, they were paraded around the markets. Sallallahu alayhi ya Abu Abdullah.